Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast, the podcast where we spotlight the people behind the science of sharks, rays, and their conservation. In this episode, we're joined by Dr. Michael, also known as Mick Grant, a postdoctoral researcher at James Cook University, who shares his journey from a childhood love of nature to groundbreaking work in river sharks and sawfishes in Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. From rediscovering rare species like the sailfin houndshark to advocating for smarter conservation policies, Mick offers insights into real-world challenges for protecting some of the ocean's most threatened predators and how the next generation of scientists can make a difference. We're going to talk about all this on this episode of the How to Protect. We're going to talk about this on this episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Let's start the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. I'm your co-host, Andrew Lewin, here with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. Dave, how are things? Are you excited for this interview?
I'm super excited for this interview for a number of reasons. Probably most notably is Mick's discovery of the sailfin houndshark, which is definitely one of the rare species out there, and one occurs in a part of the world, Papua New Guinea, that's not well known at all. But Mick has been working there for a number of years, and it's a difficult area to work into for a whole host of reasons we'll talk about in the show. And it's a fascinating area of the world. It's in that area where it's a high biodiversity of things. And so I'm really looking forward. I'm really glad we're able to get him on because Mick's traveling quite a bit and it's hard to catch up with the guy at times. But he's got some really fascinating stories, and so I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, this should be an interesting one. He's a postdoc researcher right now, and talks a lot about his PhD and sort of all these new discoveries and what you can do at this early on in his career. I think it's a really great example of what people can accomplish when they start to go for rare species or species where we don't have a lot of information on. I think, Dave, you've been professing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. Is start to learn about species we don't know about, and groups of sharks that we don't know about, and that helps in not only putting your legacy in the shark science in the field, but also, knowing more about sharks, rays, and chimeras in general. So this is going to be a great interview. Here's the interview with Dr. Mick Grant. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you after. Hey, Mick, welcome to the Beyond Jaws podcast. Are you ready to talk about sharks, skates, and rays conservation? Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Love it.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast, where we have the fabulous Dr. Mick Grant today as our guest, coming all the way from Bali, Indonesia. Mick's a postdoctoral researcher at James Cook University in Australia, where he completed an undergraduate degree, an honors degree, and a PhD at the university there. His research focuses on the conservation of sharks and rays, particularly on aspects of life history, including the applications of vertebral chemistry, extinction and vulnerability risk assessments, and understanding human drivers of population declines. Mick's research is focused particularly on riverine and coastal areas, with a particular emphasis on identifying populations and threats to river sharks, glyphis species, freshwater rays, and sawfishes in Papua New Guinea and in Indonesia. He's a member of the IUCN Shark Specialist Group, where he served as an editor on the recent Global Status of Sharks, Rays, and Chimeras report. Mick's published over 30 papers, and he frequently presents at conferences where he's been a keynote speaker at the Oceania Chondrichthyan Society and at the International Seminar on Fisheries and Marine Science at the Lambang Mangkurat University in Indonesia, which I probably mangled, but Mick can pronounce it to us correctly in a few minutes. He's also serves as the vice chair for the Sawfish Conservation Society. He's a conservation and fisheries advisor for the Piku Biodiversity Network in Papua New Guinea, and he's an adjunct lecturer at another university in Indonesia, Hasanuddin University in Indonesia. But Mick finds supervising students to be the most rewarding part of his job as a shark scientist. His current positions is a postdoctoral research fellow at Conservation and Fisheries at James Cook University, and he's a lecturer also at a university in Indonesia. And as I mentioned, Mick did his BSc at James Cook, as well as an honors and a PhD. And Mick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Lengthy intro there.
Yeah, well, you got to look good. Why don't you look good here?
Yeah.
And so So our first question we always like to ask the guests: how did you get interested in sharks and rays and marine science?
Yeah, I suppose I'm a traditional shark tragic in that I kind of grew up in a very sort of nature-based family. Spent a lot of time going to national parks and things. And some of my earliest memories are watching. There used to be a Walking with Dinosaurs series. I think it was on the BBC or something back in the,
Mhm.
I guess, late 1990s. And a few of the episodes focus on like the golden age of sharks, or the old, sharks throughout the Cretaceous and Triassic. For some reason, that just clicked with me.
Mhm.
So this time, yeah, I'm probably 3, 4 years old.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and then so my dad does a lot of fishing. He's always been a very enthusiastic fisherman. A lot of our holidays growing up were based around, we go somewhere where the fishing's good and get there and, go and scope out all the fishing spots and, look at what beaches have the best gutters and what rocks might be alright to fish based on the swell. And I think a lot of that kind of got me thinking ecologically about, why is this fishing spot better than the other?
Mm.
Mhm.
We tended to chase mulloway, which are like a big type of jewfish. I think you guys get them in South Africa too. Yeah, so they were kind of the glory catch. Don't ask me about our success rate, but the journey, not the destination. Um, yeah, so I think that got me going in terms of marine biology and fish, and thinking about the
Mhm.
environment and why fish occur where they occur, or might be hunting
Yeah.
where we want to be fishing. And we spent a
What?
lot of time.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So we a lot of the fishing we did was up at a place called Yamba, which is North New South Wales, Clarence River, and home of the bull shark is what they call that river. So there's been a bit of research out of there recently, actually. But yeah, they were the bycatch. When we're going for these Mulloway at all hours of the night, it wasn't unusual to hook a bull shark and your reel gets skinned and your line's off to the horizon.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that kind of got me interested in sharks and rivers. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, because I was always found it amazing. You could have these really big, powerful animals living in these sort of tight estuaries and things. And yeah, so I think that's probably what kicked it off mainly for me.
Now, now, when you're going to school, when you started school, like grade school and high school, would people ask you like, so what are you going to do when you grow up? Mick, you just tell them, I'm going to go study sharks.
Uh, I wanted to, for sure. I probably didn't start saying that until maybe about year 10. So my dad's sort of from a medical background. He's a medical doctor. My sister does pharmacy, and I was kind of erring toward that general
Mhm.
field, I guess. But I wasn't very academic in high school. I hated school, to be honest.
Mhm.
Scraped by and didn't really kick into gear until probably year 12. But yeah, by about year 10, I started doing a lot of spearfishing, and I bought a really nice underwater camera. Um, yeah, and me and a few of my mates would get out pretty regularly, and I think that I got into, it was probably around that time. I was probably 16, 17, where I was like, all right, I need to
Mhm.
do marine biology. So I grew up in Sydney, a place called Cronulla, south of
Mhm.
Sydney, and the marine biology options probably weren't great there. There's a few
Mhm.
there's some good universities in Sydney, but
Mhm.
marine biology is not necessarily a strong suit, and I didn't really want to end up, studying algal reefs and the things that
Yeah.
live there. I was drawn to the tropics like everyone. So yeah, James Cook University up in Townsville was a no-brainer. So I sort of set my
Mhm.
sights on that. Finished high school, took a gap year actually to get some money together to sort of fund heading up that way. Yeah, and then I went and did it. The
Yeah.
rest is history.
Yeah. I didn't know when you went up to James Cook was Colin Simpfendorfer there at the time?
He was, yeah, not to my knowledge whatsoever. Yeah, it was pretty funny actually how I tripped over him. So I was trucking along in the undergrad degree, so it's a 3-year degree. I was doing a double degree actually in aquaculture and marine biology. Um, there's this really good aquatic sort of, he did physiology of things like barramundi. And he was a really great guy, and I was, yeah, sort of half thinking of wanting to do honours with him. And then he actually left JCU, and then I went to the sort of honours coordinator, like, hey, I like sharks, and actually inquired about coming to South Africa, believe it or not, because your name had come up in my Google searches, Dave. And yeah, this lady, she just kind of looked at me like, Colin Simpendorfer's here, right? And I could just kind of sense that obviously he was some big wig in the shark world, and I was like, oh, yeah, but I just, wanted to explore my options and do that. So then went home, Googled Colin, was like, oh, yeah, okay, need to go talk to him. And then funny story, so he was that week was having a seminar with another visiting researcher. So this is 2015, I guess, early 2015. So I went along to this seminar and I was like, listen to Colin's talk. I wanted to just ask a question about anything after the talk and then go up and meet him, when the event's said and done. So I did that. So yeah, the first guy spoke and I didn't really pay him any mind. Then Colin spoke, asked a question, went and shook his hand, teed up a meeting for the next day. Then it hit me about 3 years later that the guy who spoke before Colin was Nick Bilvey, and he was presenting the 2014 global status paper, which is, probably the biggest paper in shark biology. It possibly still is. Yeah, and it just did not click with me at all for about 3 years, and then I was like, anyhow. Yeah, and that was how I got onto Colin. So yeah, that was early 2015. I was still in my 3rd year of undergrad. Yeah, and then as you sort of got to do, I think I had done a bit of research on him, sort of had a look at what what his research topics and things were, and something I was drawn to was the deep water shark space, because I noted that there wasn't much research out there, and the research that was out there was, there wasn't a lot of information in there. So I thought, okay, that could be a good thing. And it's a bit unusual, because I'm sure Colin would get, plenty of students inquiring about honours. So yeah, I had a chat to him about that. He was somewhat interested. And then he sort of put me on to Cassie Rigby. And so Cassie was living up in Cairns, which is about, 4-hour drive north of Townsville. And I happened to be heading up there to do some diving. So I, hit up Cassie and sort of said, hey, looking to do an honours project with Colin. He said to come and have a chat about deep water sharks. So I drove up there, met her at Queensland Fisheries, where she was working at the time. We had a bit of a chat, because she was finishing up her PhD and had done a whole bunch of deep water stuff in that, obviously. But yeah, it didn't quite sound like there was legs for sort of any residual data or things to do for an honours. So that, ended up being an incredibly valuable connection to make, which, Cass and I, she's still sort of one of my mentors, I guess. And then it was back to Colin, and I think we met 3 or 4 times, weren't really getting anywhere, and I was sort of getting concerned as to whether anything would eventuate. And then one day I walked into his office and there's a big box of silky shark vertebrae sitting on his desk, and he goes, do you know what the silky shark is? And I said, no, I don't. Brought it up on Google, showed me a picture, and then we sort of started talking about life history and aging. So John Smart was at JCU at the time, sort of doing all his modelling and age and growth and demography scripts, and so I sort of slotted into that space, and spent
So
the next
was
6
that
months
something?
aging sharks.
Was that something that you when he presented you with that project, was that something you were like interested in pursuing, or was it just more of, oh, okay, so we finally found a project that we can do together as more of a last minute resort? Like initially, did you think of aging as something that you wanted to do, or did you have something else in mind? And then when it was presented to you, did you take it because, oh, this actually seems interesting, or did you take it because, finally we have a project, not to take anything away from it. Obviously it ended up working out really well for you, but just initially as that enthusiastic student that you want to be, trying to find a project, did you just kind of settle on that? Or was that something that when he presented to you, like, no, this is something I want to do?
I mean, in the initial 5 seconds, it was, yes, I get to do a project with Colin,
Right.
It wouldn't matter what it was. No, but then I, sort of did a bit of research on the species and, second most caught shark in the world. And just the application of age and growth sciences and how that can transfer to teleostotoliths and, fisheries management. Yeah, there was a very short reflection period, and the green light was on, so on we marched. Yeah.
So, and that became your honors project then?
That did, yeah. So I had 550 vertebrae to age, and I actually did a little internship with Colin before that. Our college had some scheme for undergrad students to sort of get a taste of research. So I had Colin had a set of silky shark that had been aged from the Indian Ocean. So I sort of trained up on those, and then did my PNG, or Central West Pacific silky shark vertebrae. And good memories in that.
Yeah.
The dry lab, aging lab, it stunk. Like there was just decaying boxes of very slowly decaying vertebrae. Aircon didn't really work. Being Townsville, in the summer months, it's 35 degrees, close to 100% humidity. I used to you'd be looking through the microscope to age, and it was so hot that you'd get condensation on the lens, so you could age about 3 vertebrae, and then you sort of had to back away, wipe the lens off, and let the lens actually cool down, because the heat from your eye would make the glass colder than the air. Lost a lot of sweat in that room, but
probably lose a little bit, shed some pounds too, the water weight.
Yeah.
And, so you did that and do that for your honors project. And then did you end up going straight to a PhD from there, or when you?
Yeah, I did. I never had a chance to breathe, to be honest. So what happened? So I punched out that age and growth work, and then I kind of had a few extra months, and we did a bit of demography as well, which was very much standing on the shoulders of John Smart. I, to this day, struggle to write 1 + 1 in R. But yeah, so we got through that, and then the honours package ended up being, a really, really solid thesis with a good age and growth paper and then a good demography paper. So I went down to OCS this is 2016 now, presented my work. So Will White had the funding for this broader Sharks and Rays, a PNG project, where all these vertebrae that, it led to, my honours, Brooks Masters, Shushmita did a Masters too, John Smart's PhD. There's a bunch of us that worked on all the different species. And I presented my work and then started talking to Cassie and Britt about deep water sharks for a PhD again. I was back on the deep water train. And we had a couple of chats about, is there anything to do? Can we get on any of these vessels in, the Coral Sea off Queensland or the Western deep water trawl? And the feeling was it'd be a bit difficult. And again, it kind of just wasn't really going anywhere just because of the funding and, what you need to get on these deep water boats, because, fishermen obviously don't let people on for nothing. And then out of the blue, Will was like, hey, can we have a quick chat? Absolutely. Sat down. He said, look, I got this funding from Save Our Seas at the time, I think he hadn't actually been awarded the funding, but he just put the second round application in, and yeah, it was to go and essentially work out where sawfish were in Papua New Guinea, because he'd done a bit of work on sort of shark fin markets, and they detected all four species in just this tiny amount of sample effort, which kind of indicated that okay, they must be out there somewhere. And that was the same trip where they sort of tripped over a couple of glyphus, the two glyphus species,
Mm-hmm.
which at the time were the first records in 50 years for Papua New Guinea. So yeah, there was a bit of a feeling that, you know, you look at a map of Papua New Guinea, rivers, enormous estuaries, you know, really shallow, turbid coastal waters, you know, had all the makings of prime sawfish and glyphus habitat, but extremely inaccessible,
Yeah. No,
which I'll circle back to later.
yeah. When you came across these first river sharks, glyphus, and were they at fish markets? Obviously, you found them in where the guys were catching them.
No, I think we found fins first, and then we sort of fell in this village where they caught a few. I think one of the photos I'd sent you where I've got a really long beard. It was about day 40 of
Yeah.
a very long, grueling trip, and we finally found one, and yeah, I was very elated with that. Yeah, so I guess just to go back in the story a bit there, so I took on that PhD from Will. So I guess the pitch Will had was, I've got this funding. I don't know if there's legs for a PhD in it, but you know, it'll be pretty cool nonetheless.
Right.
So I had a chat with Colin again, and we sort of hatched a plan to stretch it into a PhD. I think Colin's student load was saturated at the time, so we had Andrew Chin come on as primary advisor. Then Will White was obviously an advisor, and then we got Pete Kine as well. So that I ended up with a dream team: Colin, Andrew, Will, and Pete. Amazing.
Let me ask you this in terms of, because I know a lot of the times when you see people that go to school and they do like their undergraduate, maybe their master's and a PhD, even a postdoc, they do it at different universities, and we're seeing. I'm starting to notice more and more that people are staying at universities to their undergrad, maybe not do their master's, but have the legs to do a PhD. What was the reason that you stayed at JCU? Was it just because of the people that were on your advisory were like, yeah, like mostly at JCU, obviously they're legends in the game to do that. But was that the reason, just the project came to be, it ended up having the legs to do a PhD, and then also your advisory committee was just so, you know, stacked, you're just like, why go anywhere else? Like, was that ever a concern of yours? Because I think some people, when they do PhDs, they wonder if they should stay at the same school that they did their undergrad or even their graduate work, like a master's, and then, you know, go somewhere else. I'd love to hear your thought process on that.
Yeah, well, for me, I didn't have time to think about it, to be honest. I mean, I was
so organically, eh?
Yeah, I was sort of offered that work from Will that was September, and then my honors thesis wasn't due, I think, until the November.
So it's
by the time November rolled around,
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know, my PhD paperwork was in and all that. But at the same time, I mean, you know, to bring up Colin again, I mean, you'd be crazy to go elsewhere. I mean, Colin's
true.
Essentially the Aristotle of sharks. I mean, yeah, so there's no question for me.
Yeah.
But I get the value. No, I do get the value, and a lot of the students we have coming through to us now, they're rarely people that have done an undergrad at JCU. They're often master's students.
It is different, eh?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I got to ask you, before Will pitched the river shark stuff to you, had you ever heard of river sharks before?
I'd heard of them. Yeah. No,
Okay.
Bull sharks had probably been my favorite species growing up, and then reading about bull sharks, you know, there's always these throwaway sentences of, there's these other glyphus things that also occur in rivers, but we don't know much about them, and, you know, back to bull sharks. So they were firmly on my radar. And to be honest, I was more interested in the river sharks than the sawfish going into that project.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And you've seen what both was the northern river shark and the Garrick's river shark? Is that those are the two species you encountered?
Yeah, so they're the two we get. They're the
Yeah.
two we get in Australia and New Guinea, and then
Yeah.
we get the Glyphis gangeticus, which that'll come up maybe a bit later. But yeah,
Mm.
we just recently found that up in northern Borneo.
Where'd you find it
In North Kalimantan, so just
Okay.
in Indonesia side of the
Oh
Sabah
yeah.
border.
I was just in Fahmi, right? In Jakarta, Fahmi. Yeah, he just showed me, maybe this is the same one, but he had a glyphus, a gangeticus, or no, excuse me, not glyphus, the gangeticus that he just recently got, but I can't tell you where he got it. It might have been the same one. It was pretty cool.
A picture. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty cool for me to see. I tell a story. I mentioned this in one of our earlier podcasts, but when I was a student of Leonard Campagno's back in the late 1980s, he had I think most of the only known river sharks at the time, the Gangeticus. He was working on Garrick-eye to describe it at the time, and
Mm.
then he had pretty much all the known species. And at this time we thought they might be extinct because he'd been at that point he'd
Mm.
been through India, he'd been to the Ganges River, the Hooghly. I think he'd been through Indonesia, but they didn't have as much going on. Like again, he was there probably back in the early to mid '80s, and at the time of working on it, there just wasn't really much more material around. And they actually thought this thing was extinct. And I mentioned that because like the work you've been doing, Pete Kine's been doing, and Julia, it's kind of cool. These things are actually, if you know where to find them, from what I can tell, they're kind of common.
Yeah.
Maybe common's
Oh,
not a
yeah.
word, but it was.
Well, I mean, I guess two things. I think the more we understand these animals, they just sit in this tight salinity band, and you need a big tidal river that's really turbid, and
Mm-hmm.
go to sort of anywhere from 10 to 25 parts per thousand, and if they're there, you'll find them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think where our understanding is getting to a point that they probably do not use fresh water, like outright fresh water. They certainly don't go up beyond the tidal reaches or anything like bull sharks. And then the adults have always been the enigma. I mean, like back in 2006, you could almost count the number of known river sharks in Australia on two hands. Like there was just hardly any observations because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't get caught in the inshore fisheries, and if they did, they probably got misid'd. Um, yeah, so they were just it was just really strange. And then some of the work Pete Kine did, I guess they kind of zoned in on okay, they're in the estuary and they don't leave the estuary. And some of the microcam work we've been doing on the vertebrae indicates that the adults don't really leave the estuary either. It's more
Yeah.
juveniles are upper estuary, adults lower estuary. Um, very
Mm-hmm.
little indication of fresh water or marine. So,
Yeah. So do you see it? Do you see them very much out in the pure marine environment, or do they just tend to be right in that narrow zone in the estuarine water?
yeah, they. The interesting thing is there's been one, I think, adult that was caught well kind of away from a river and very much marine. Um, but probably 99.9% of records of all three
Yeah.
species are from an estuary. So
Yeah.
I think there was a bit of a misconception early on that where Glyphis gangeticus was described from was kind of
Mm-hmm.
suggested to have been a freshwater locality when in fact it probably wasn't. And that kind of set the
Mm-hmm.
seed that they're these freshwater sharks, but I don't think they ever were. Unless they did penetrate further up the Ganges, which they
I,
tend not to do in other
well,
systems.
I can share one story with you. But this again, Leonard Campagno, when he was writing the 1984 catalog of the sharks of the world for FAO, they sent him on a around the world trip, and he went to India for like 6 weeks. And he went to the museum collections. And he went actually up the Ganges, and he saw lots of bull sharks, but no glyphus. And but again, he may have been too far up the river, like you were just suggesting.
Mm.
And but he said bull sharks were pretty common, but he came away thinking that these river sharks were probably might have gone extinct at that time, just because he went up and down there. He went all over, and they just could not find these things at all. But again, nobody was really, until he sort of showed up, there wasn't really anybody paying that close attention, but they couldn't find it. But now, knowing what you know, what Pete Kine knows about finding like the right habitat, you've got to be in the right spot to get those things. I get, from my having been around a while, I looked at it as kind of a happy story, and that these things are around, and if you know where to find them, they seem to be still hanging on pretty well, particularly in Australia. You know, I don't know about Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, maybe not so much, but I just haven't been that was one of the first species I can recall as a young PhD student thinking like, man, these things may be gone like for good, the whole genus. So it's been such, for me personally, it's been an evolution to see that. And I went out last year. I went out with Pete Kine and Julia. We went out and tagged some of the Glyphus garrici, and so that was probably one of the highlights of my career, just to be able to actually go out and see them in the wild, thinking that these things had been extinct at one time. So that was pretty cool.
There's definitely a group of sharks that I'm sure ignite the lost shark neurons. Because they're just a mystery.
For sure.
A mystery. I mean, just to sort of skim over the P&G work, but when we started the Borneo project I'm currently working on, so our funding was specifically to go and try and find the river shark that presumably occurs somewhere in Borneo. So Fahmy had found one in 2005 in southern Kalimantan, which is the southern coast of Borneo. And I was kind of just going to bash my way through the major rivers and look for freshwater stingrays while I was there. But originally I put that project in to save our seas, and I'd selected out 3 major areas to target. And then I kept just looking at North Kalimantan and this huge turbid delta estuary, and just thinking that is exactly like where I find river sharks and PNG. But we had some advice, some fins that were glyphosy from rivers, from other systems. So we targeted those originally. But eventually I just went, I got to go to North Kalimantan. You know, they're going to be there. We went there, got on a boat, went to a village. I had my salinity meter, 10 parts per thousand, perfect. Went and spoke to a fisherman. Hey, do you have any shark fins? Pulled out a bag of just, clear as day glyphus fins. And then, we sort of said, like you sort of act a bit nonchalant, I guess, so they don't, see it as a cash commodity or something with you. But we, had him sort of just photographing his sharks he'd catch, and he caught one the next night. I think he caught 4 or 12 or something 2 nights later, and then he caught 4 more. And then we're like, all right, you've clearly changed your fishing behavior here, and we cut that off. But I mean, abundant. That's more Glyphus gangeticus than have been documented since the year 2000 across the rest of the range. We got that in 4 nights of fishing. So so that was a win. We never found them in South Kalimantan though. I was down there, went to some really good habitat, really well situated rivers, but I was there at the wrong time of the year. The trade wind was blowing south to north, and they weren't really fishing with the nets and things. So I think they're there, but
Have you been able to do, you or anyone been able to do much long-term tracking with these? I know Pete's done some stuff up in the Northern Territories. Have you been able to do anything in Papua New Guinea or anything?
I haven't. No, it's difficult because in Papua New Guinea we can't really set up an acoustic array because one, those rivers get about 12 meters of rain per year, and the wet season, if you put your stakes into the mud, they'd be on their way to Australia by the end of the wet season. The other thing too is that you sort of need to tie a float to the receiver so you know where to go and find it. Floats are big time commodity in the fishing villages of Papua New Guinea, so someone would have come and cut them the next night if you tried to do that. And yeah, so the short answer is no. But I know Pete at the moment, or probably Julia's. I think they've been doing some sort of long term work in the Adelaide River, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it would be interesting.
Well, I got to ask you, I know a little, but how's it working in Papua New Guinea? I know there's
For
challenges, let's
research
say.
or yeah.
Just, research, just trying to get around and stay
Yeah.
alive.
It's yeah, I mean you've got to have the right connections or it's impossible. The thing is some areas of Papua New Guinea are quite easy and accessible when there's hotels and it's no dramas. Like some of the islands off the north, particularly the northern coast, Madang Way, it's not really an issue getting there. But in the Gulf province and the Western province, so they're sort of the two most impoverished provinces of Papua New Guinea, which is somewhere in the bottom 10 of GDPs in the world. So yeah, things are pretty hectic there. Like no electricity, no sewage. And I was lucky. I tripped over this lady, Yolani Yamapu, who I still work very, very closely with. We do a lot of things together. And she runs an NGO and had been working on turtles in southern New Guinea. And I sort of hijacked that NGO and pumped in a bunch of shark funding, and now she's PNG's primary shark expert. So yeah, I corrupted her a bit. But yeah, I mean, having her social capital, because she'd been working the area for probably about 8 years before I sort of inquired about her. So yeah, it's very proud customary heritage and traditional land ownership. The governments have very little social capital in those areas, so it's if the communities don't want you there, that'll be very clear, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But she kind of acts as this conduit between the customary governance and the national governance, and does a lot of back and forth between like the National Fisheries Authority and the CEPA, the Conservation and Environmental Protection Authority, and she does amazing things for a whole range of species and a whole range of communities. So yeah, I mean, if I never met her, who knows what would have happened to my PhD? I mean, she really, really pioneered a lot of that. And to get to some of the rivers we got to, like some of the rivers we surveyed had never been surveyed. And you get to these villages and the kids haven't seen white people before, and they're touching your hair, and just at any given time you got 60% of the people in the room just intently staring at you, and it was an amazing experience to look at.
Yeah. I've had that. I've had those experiences where all the little kids are following you around the village because they've never seen you. And if it's like I have blue eyes. If you have blue eyes, they're just really like locked into like they're gonna. They've never seen anybody like. Let alone they haven't seen a white person, let alone someone with light eyes. That's just really it's quite like you become a sideshow for the village.
And one of the amazing things about doing work in Papua New Guinea and then going to Borneo was like the human development in Borneo in these remote riverine villages was amazing, absolutely amazing. Like they got electricity, most of them have sort of running water. They've built these roads up on the mangroves just on like wooden slats. People have got motorbikes and stuff. Like I was blown away. But the difference was I was also very surprised about their lack of exposure to sort of Western people. So same thing, I'd get to these villages and they'd be like, oh my God, there's a white guy here. But the difference was in Indonesia, everyone's got phones and TikTok and Facebook. So you'd end up with a crowd of people just filming you and everyone wants a photo. And whether in PNG it was, you're a ghost, you were kind of to be avoided, but looked at. So yeah, it was a very different,
interesting
kind of dynamic.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you because this was one of the probably one of the if I had to pick one of the sort of my top 10 lost sharks I'd like to have seen. I know you guys came across recently the sailfin houndshark, Gogolia.
Yeah.
That was. Can you share much about that? Right. About that.
Well,
it's
I mean, the paper, we're just waiting on it to come back from review. So I hope
well,
it's not sitting in your
I hope I'm
inbox,
not.
Dave.
I hope not giving anything away. But I reviewed it like about 5 weeks ago and sent it back, so I don't know what happened to it.
Right. Well, there you go.
So
Yeah.
I can't speak
So
for
now
anybody else.
the story with that. So I had known Jack. So Jack's Samagai. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he was working for WWF, the PNG office, and he was actually going to come on one of my expeditions back in 2018 or something, but he couldn't in the end. And we sort of loosely kept in touch. And then, just one day scrolling Twitter of all things, and it's like Jack's made this post of some people are having sailback houndshark for dinner tonight. I just had this point blank picture, and then I followed him up. I think I'd CC'd Will in, and we were like, what and where, and, more info, please. And he was like, well, we're doing some monitoring off Madang. So it's in the exact same place that holotype are being found in
Hmm.
Aristotle Bay there. Then a few more pictures had come through. Like, there was a pregnant female that had I can't remember the exact number, like 8 yoked over or something in it. And
I know the holotype. The original one was a pregnant female, and then and that was and you found some more pregnant females. It's
at
basically the
least
same.
one, yeah. I think. Yeah, I'm just trying. I haven't read that. When you're on a paper and you forget what it's about.
Yeah.
Because I think we had 6 animals in total, and I think they're all adults, which is interesting. Because there's a bit of a funny. Yeah, the geography of that bay is a bit funny. There's sort of this deep channel that runs right into the coast. Because there's
Hmm.
almost no continental shelf off the northern coast of PNG. It's only
Yeah.
less than a kilometre wide in some places. So there's this kind of ravine that runs in, and they're clearly coming in perhaps
Hmm.
into
Because
that shallower area.
they've all been caught like around 200 meters or so, 250 meters, something like that, kind of deep.
Relatively deep. I think no, I think the ones just caught recently were sort of 80 meters or something.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, a bit
I th-
shallower.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
yeah, I think the original. Well, yeah, I think do you know who described the genus? The genus for people listening, the family's Triachidae, and the genus is a Gogolia. Do you know who described the genus?
Uh,
Come on.
firewood.
No, it was Firewood. I was the name. Anyway, Leonard Capagna described the genus when he was a PhD student.
Right. Okay.
They went back to the California cat. I had to bring that up after talking about the glyphus and Leonard's story with the glyphus. And then this sailfin
Yeah.
houndshark comes up that he actually described the genus, and it was Firewood was a he was a. Do I remember what his connection was? If he was the one that collected it or found it, or I forget what his connection was with it. But anyway, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. That was another bit of an interesting
Yeah.
connection with that one. But yeah, that was, if I had to pick one of my top 10 ones, that would have been one of the ones I'd love to have been in on finding that one. That was
Yeah.
such a bizarre thing.
And,
Anybody go ahead. Yeah.
and again, like I'm sure you're well aware of, Dave, is that a lot of these, lost sharks, it's a big factor is the lack of effort to find them. I mean,
Yeah.
no one had probably done shark surveys in Madang until Jack started doing them in 2020. Like that's the reality. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of work to do for a lot of species in a lot of areas.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Easily 80-90% of the things, all you need to do is just actually go out to the areas where they may occur and you'll find them. But a lot of the areas, like you just explained, are not easy to get to, and there's not a lot of people willing to go to a lot of those areas. But if you go there, you can certainly find them. That was that's definitely true. There's a few that are really, you got to be really lucky to see, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, hopefully you guys, that's just the beginning of a story there. You guys will get some more, maybe actually learn a little something more about the species, because you only find it from what you told me, just this one location there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think Jack unfortunately has been his role has changed, and I think he's back in Port Moresby and working in Central Province or something now. So unfortunately, I'm not sure how much ongoing fisheries kind of work's happening in the day. But
yeah.
anyway, it's one for the future. We'll see.
Yeah. Again, just for people listening there, if you go check out it's a sailfin hound shark, and it's Gogolia fieldwork. Check that out if you get a chance. It's a really cool looking shark, and if you go online, you can find pictures of it. And Mick has a paper coming out on it, so look for that. And I think
Nice.
it's in Journal of Fish Biology. It'll be in, I believe. So.
Fish biology, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I
So,
did not
well,
hold it.
not
I didn't.
yeah.
I,
Jack's paper. I'm very much just a tack-in author on that one, but yeah,
yeah.
really happy to see Jack had followed through with that.
Oh, that's really cool. So what other things you have going on now? You're based in Bali, right? And so you're going to Borneo now? Is a lot of your research effort now?
Yeah. So I guess yeah, jumping back into my life story. So the PNG stuff kind of finished up. Wrote up the thesis. Colin moved to Hobart. Um, and then, yeah, Andrew Chin and I were kind of left at JCU, sort of, looking at each other like, what next? And then, yeah, to Andrew's credit, I've, been working really closely with him now for sort of the last 5 years, I guess. And yeah, he's put some really big yards in to kind of get this fish and fisheries lab at JCU, not only to keep going, but yeah, sort of become a magnet for all these students and things, and build projects and try and support postdocs and things. So yeah, credit to Andrew, but yeah, so I guess I hung around for the ride with him and helped supervise some students and things. And then we were, funnily enough, the week COVID broke out, which was in Australia anyway, circa March 2020, Keystone grants for Save Our Seas were due in a few weeks. And Andrew and I were up in Cooktown doing some work on freshwater mussels, of all things, with an Indigenous group. And yeah, we just kind of got talking about Indonesia and Asia generally. And Anaya Simeon had sent me a photo of this bluefin fin from a river in Borneo, and I was like, let's go find it. And we put together this Keystone project. Got the funding. By then, COVID had shut the world down. Indonesia sort of slammed its borders shut, as did Australia, so we couldn't get out of the country. So that project actually got delayed by sort of 2.5 years. We couldn't even apply for a visa until mid 2022. So yeah, in that time, helped out Andrew, sort of building up the lab again. Had some really good students sort of come and go. Yeah, and then 2023, I could finally get into the country, and I was going to do that project. Like, I wanted to do one trip per year, so sort of 1 month long trip per year over 3 years, different province each time. That was going to be the project. But with the delays, we had all this money and, this compressed timeline. So I just took a year and just went and lived between Sulawesi, which is where my host, Hasanuddin University is, and yeah, spent the year traveling back and forth between Borneo and Sulawesi, looking for freshwater rays and river sharks, and yeah, doing a lot of interviews. I mean, that project wasn't so much me leading; it was more I was training people at Hasanuddin University or local universities in the province we visited in how to sit down with a fisherman and do a social survey, things like that. And then they kind of did the research, like I was present, but I was very much a capacity building project. Yeah, where, yeah.
Have you found any other really cool, like you mentioned, like river stingrays and some freshwater riverine stingrays? Have you found any interesting species in that group?
Oh, they're all interesting in that group, Dave. But
Well, I know that, but
Come on, Dave. They're all interesting.
yeah. Oh, I realize it. But any of them stand out that you thought, well, this was pretty awesome find?
It was pretty cool seeing a fluvi trigon oxyrhynchus for the
Mhm.
first time. They're the marble whipray, which are these, small bodied. I think they only get to about 38 centimeters disc width. And they just got this really striking kind of leopard, you know, marble reticulated pattern. I don't even have the adjectives to describe it. And the color, it's just amazing. So that was pretty cool. I kind of focused on the east coast of Borneo and then into the south, and we only found the fluvi trigons in the south. So they don't really occur on that east coast, mainly because there's not much continental shelf. So there's not really, I guess, a way for them to spread around there biogeographically. But yeah, we found surprisingly good numbers in the southern parts of Borneo there, which prior to that work, we kind of assumed they occurred there, but we didn't really have solid evidence. So that was good to see. It's good to see some healthy populations.
Yeah.
And giant freshwater whiprays. I mean, they were pretty abundant. We saw a lot of them, and they're cool. They're amazing. They're big animals. I actually, just to go on a tangent, so Zeb Hogan, who used to run a show called Megafish on National Geographic, so he's been working up in the Mekong for a number of years, and they caught a giant freshwater whipray that I think it weighed in at 300 kilos or something,
Jesus.
which was the largest verifiable freshwater fish on record. So that includes teleost as well. Undoubtedly, that species gets bigger than that, but this is the largest verifiable record. So yeah, I actually went up to Cambodia in what was that? The end of 2023 for the Guinness World Record presentation, and yeah, they had all this footage and things of this huge animal, like I think it's 230 centimeter disc
Wow.
width and 300 kilo, and just absolutely enormous.
I don't think people realize how much a lot of these stingrays, they get quite large, like this one you're talking about. I mean, they get so big, and I don't think most people realize just how big a lot of these stingrays get. They tend to focus more on the big sharks, but these stingrays get pretty massive. Some of the
Oh
species,
yeah,
with them, and
yeah, and I think once they get that big, I think they just kind of escape the fishery in a sense that there's no gear that can hold on to them, which is why they're not seen. Because a lot of these kind of more developing nation states, it's unusual to see people using like big hooks with really strong line in an inshore setting. It's all gill nets and trawl and other methods like that. So yeah, I think they some of these rays get to a certain size, they kind of get a bit of protection just because they undoubtedly get caught, but probably just break the gear.
yeah. Have you spent much time Have you spent much time traveling around through like Southeast Asia, like Cambodia you mentioned, and Vietnam, and in that part of the world much?
Not a whole lot. Yeah, I haven't done much in mainland Asia. I kind of want to, but yeah, it's one of those areas where there's unfortunately probably not a whole lot left. I am still in contact with Zeb Hogan, so we've got a student who's going to do a sort of a vulnerability assessment of the Mekong's megafauna, working with him, Olivia, her name is. So I'm looking forward to that and hoping that, if we can get some more work on the rays, because the other, ray that we know nothing about is the Mekong stingray, which is this freshwater thing that's hardly ever recorded. Who knows what the story is with that species. And there's a group up in, I think, Laos that get onto a few of those. And so they're still there anyway. There's still a population.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Mekong's just got so many problems. So it's...
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that part of the world there's like almost nothing known about any of the sharks, rays, anything like that. So there'd be a high area you could find some things that maybe haven't been seen for a while. A lot of sharks up in that area. And
I mean, I'd be interested. Just last thing on the Mekong. So the marbled whipray, fluvi trigon oxyrhynchus, I was talking about before. So that was actually described from a specimen collected in Phnom Penh, which is quite far up the Mekong in Cambodia.
Hmm.
in 1874 or something. Hasn't been recorded in that system since. Um, and then I think there's a Mark Harris would know more about this, but there was a set of jaws that were presumably collected off an island not far from the Mekong Delta mouth, which I think aligned with Glyphus glyphus. Yeah, so it's a system that would have, and of course, large-tooth sawfish used to be in the system
Yeah, yeah.
ultimately if they still occur. So
I was going to ask you about the sawfish because there are people studying them. Do you, in whether it's in PNG or Borneo or any of these areas, do you come across sawfish very often?
yeah, I mean PNG. Well, the funny thing with PNG is I got there just as this fishmore fishery was taking roots. So I guess the fishing history in Papua New Guinea was they tended not to really do much fishing. They'd use some sort of indiscriminate traps and things, and
Mm.
the productivity of the estuary in southern PNG is just so good that it's so easy to catch fish. So yeah, up until sort of 2010, they just didn't really use nets or any trolls or anything that was destructive, like because it was that easy to get fish. Um, and then and so, just a further context to that, I think in the 1990s, the government actually gave out gill nets to these villagers, like, go catch some fish because you're all protein deficient. Like, they were trying to encourage them to fish, and it often
Hmm.
didn't work. So, yeah, then enter 2015, there was sort of some, I guess, Asian business owners in the region that were exporting mud crab and a few things like that. And then, yeah, they cottoned on to the swim bladder trade. So, for those that
Mm.
don't know, swim bladder is the organ that teleost fish use to maintain buoyancy and also to communicate in the water. And estuarine fish that live in turbid environments where eyesight is no good use their swim bladder. They sort of can, I don't know, squeeze it, contract it, and makes this kind of boom
Hmm.
kind of noise. If you've ever slept on a boat at night, sometimes you hear croakers under the boat and you hear this kind of docking kind of
Mm.
noise. That's the swim
Mm.
bladder. So estuarine fish have these big, thick swim bladders, and they're worth a lot of money in sort of
Hmm.
cultural Chinese cuisine. Um,
Hmm.
and demand is high and value is very high. And what we've seen globally, and PNG's become the case study, is sort of this really high foreign investment from often Asian expats into these
Hmm.
areas where there's loans of fishing gear and gill nets, outboard engines, boats, you name it. They'll give it to
Yeah.
the fishermen who then target croakers, and that is just So going back to your question there, sawfish I think were quite abundant in PNG probably up to about 2015, and I think
Mm.
a a significant proportion of the population has probably been caught in the last 10 years,
Hmm.
and they're not common there anymore.
Yeah.
Still there, but not common.
What where do you see, like, with all this, with your work and everything, where do you see yourself going over the next 5, 10 years and stuff, as far as your career trajectory? Where do you see yourself heading towards?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be honest, I'm more interested in studying people who catch sharks than I am in studying sharks. I'm not really drawn to ecology and, you know, biology all that much, just because we know what the problems are, for sharks and rays in the world, and we sort of know what we need to do. In the words of Colin, if he doesn't mind me quoting him, we probably don't need to study do all that much more ecological work on sharks, because I think a lot of the barriers we face now are policy and the politics of getting the measures in place that we know need to be in place. So
Hmm.
that's why, I really look up to those people like Rima and, Cass Rigby and Sarah Fowler and a bunch of people in your part of the world that, you know, make that effort to pursue these CITES listings and things things because it works. CITES, I mean, when I was in PNG pre-carcharinids being listed, shark fin was everywhere, in the villages and drying racks, you'd see it. Fast forward to, recent trips. I was back in PNG in 2000 or the end of last year, December. Hardly any fin. And, in a sense, fish maw has replaced it in these coastal areas in some regions, but it's clear that, the head has been kind of cut off of the beast, and the money in that market chain, I think, has faded. Like, I can't really give you much good evidence. It's very anecdotal, but it was the same when I was in Borneo. Like, there's not a lot of shark fin drying racks in coastal villages anymore in Asia. Unfortunately, though, like everything, when one product fades, another booms, and it's the skins of Asiatic rays that are causing concerns in Asia now, along with fish maw, which is again incidentally catching a range of coastal sharks. It's our big problem in Papua New Guinea, and it's, this glyphis population we've just found in North Kalimantan. There's fish maw happening there as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Where do you see, like, what did last question here for you, Steph? It's been really super interesting talking to you about all this, your adventures through PNG, but what advice would you have for a young person starting out?
Find a hole and fill it. I think
I like that.
Looking back at my career, I mean, it was the review paper I did in my PhD, I think, that set me on a trajectory. So I was going to, look for these sort of things that might be occurring in freshwater in PNG, and we kind of ummed and ahed about a review topic, and then we're kind of going to review like the ecology of sharks and rays in freshwater. So I kind of got to work on that, and then a few days later on, and I was like, we don't know what a freshwater shark or ray is. Like, the definitions are so poorly defined. We don't know what species are occurring there, whether they can survive there, whether they're just transient visitors. And there were a few. So Campagno and Cook wrote a really good paper on the topic in 1995, and then there was another paper by Martin or someone in 2005, but was very similar to the Campagno work. So it was apparent that no one had really sat down and unpacked the topic since 1995 with any earnest. We did that, and we, tried to list out what are our euryhaline species, what are our freshwater species, what are our truly estuarine species, and then what's transient. When the numbers came in, I think we had 10 euryhaline sharks and rays. Only 4 of those are sharks. So most people, think of the bull shark, but there's actually 9 other species that are doing a somewhat similar life history. And no freshwater sharks. And then, coming back to what we were talking about before with the glyphis, there's just, beyond the bull shark, is, if there are occurrences of glyphis in freshwater, it's potentially transient. I know Pete Klein's got a few records of small juveniles in sort of some very fresh conditions, but it's still very much within the estuary. So that was interesting. And then, lo and behold, the group weren't doing too well in terms of extinction risk. So, they're kind of this, priority. I think the overall stat was more than half were data deficient on the red list, which is mainly an artifact of the Patamo trigonid rays in South America. Sort of, a lot of recent taxonomic descriptions and things there. So that, I held on to that topic, I think, and I still do, in terms of the freshwater sharks and rays, and we've recently kind of been able to get them noticed within like the IUCN Freshwater Biodiversity Unit, and have them included in the big Nature paper that just came out on the status of freshwater things. So we're trying to get them in the freshwater conversation, because the narrative of mega fish is what they call them, Telios fish that get over 30 kilos, that live in fresh water, the stat is like an 88% decline since the 1970s.
Mm.
Numerous
Mhm.
extinctions, and trying to situate sharks and rays, freshwater sharks and rays within that narrative, we don't have the information to do that at the moment, and that's
Yeah.
definitely that academic space I really enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, Mick, we want to thank you for coming on. This has been a super fascinating episode talking to you about freshwater sharks and rays and just sort of your experiences working in, countries like PNG and Borneo and stuff. It's really fascinating. I think your message about young people like starting out, like find something nobody else is doing, I think is
Yeah.
really
That's
good. And
huge.
hopefully people will do that. But yeah, I really want to thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll definitely have you back on here sometime in the future when you maybe talk some more about sailfin hound sharks or something. So anyway,
Yeah, for sure.
thank
Yeah, no, there's a range of P&G stories that didn't make the cut there. So yeah, happy to talk at any time.
Great.
Absolutely.
Good.
Awesome. Well,
All
thank you
right.
so much, Mick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
thank you
care.
guys, and yeah, special thank you just to the Colin and Andrew for the help.
Thank you, Mick, for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. It was great to have you on, learning about all these new discoveries and your work on making sure policy is the right thing, like the right thing to go by for these sharks. Dave, what'd you think of the interview?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was really cool to have Mick share his stories and everything. I knew it'd be a great episode with him, and of course, obviously, hearing about the sailfin hound shark was probably my highlight of the show. But talking about some of the working in Papua New Guinea, which is not an easy area. He spends a lot of time in Indonesia in that area as well, doing a lot of his research, and then of course, helping with policy and stuff. So it was a wonderful thing. It was really nice having him on and hearing it firsthand, sort of the stuff. And he does a lot of stuff like I do, like basically looks for these lost sharks, things
Yeah.
that they find and everything. And I really enjoyed the story of when they finally came across this sailfin hound shark. The guys were, I think, basically having it for dinner or something. So, which is not unusual.
No,
Which is not
not
unusual.
unusual at all.
It's like though, but they didn't know. They really didn't know anything about it, and so it was just really cool hearing the whole story about that.
Yeah, I just think it's overall just interesting what you can accomplish at such a young age in the worlds of sharks. I think a lot of people think that the shark field is plentiful of shark scientists, but it seems as though not a lot of people are well, I mean, I'm not saying not a lot of people, but it's rare where you see people, going out into rare sharks and finding out more about rare sharks. It's harder to be able to find information on them, but it seems like, it's possible, and it's beneficiary to the field.
Yeah, and just to emphasize
Excuse me.
where he's working, like in Papua New Guinea, that is not an easy place to work. It's a
Right.
really tough area. I mean, you've got piracy, crime. You have a lot of problems going on there. And I mean, I know people have gone in there to work. Other colleagues of ours have gone into work in there, and they'll land and they'll basically be told, get back on the plane and get out of here. You can't stay here.
Right.
So it's not an easy. So my hat's off to somebody like that really persists, because I can't overstate, like it is a pretty dangerous area to work in. You can't just go wandering in on your own like that. And but he's been working there for a number of years with this project, and he's built a lot of really wonderful contacts in Papua New Guinea. Which any of these places, if you heard me talk, you have to really get to know the local people in there. They're going to help you, or it's not going to be a successful expedition unless you got to know the people in there, and then to
Agreed.
ingrate yourself within the community and the culture there is huge. It's huge.
Yeah, I completely agree. Agree.
Yeah.
And we want to thank Mick again for joining us on the show. I think it was really great to have him on and be able to learn about all these discoveries and the work that he's doing. And we'll put any kind of links for him in the show notes. And then, Dave, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
It's Lost Shark Guy on Instagram, or go to YouTube channel at Lost Shark Guy, and check out the new series I have going that Andrew's worked with me in editing. And Denise Sotomayor is filmed, but it's on Searching for Lost Sharks, Extinct or Alive, and you can check out the first 3 episodes there, looking for Ecuador's lost shark. And
Yes,
hope you do. And
absolutely.
please subscribe.
We've had a lot of great feedback on those videos. It's been amazing. We're going to see more come out as well.
Yep.
So it's going to be a great fun. People are going to really like it. So so check that out. And if you want to hit us up on Instagram, you can do so at Beyond Jaws Pod. That's at Beyond Jaws Pod. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. And of course, we always welcome comments. So put them in the description or in the comments below in YouTube. Or if you want to get a hold of us, you just hit us up on Instagram. Just DM either one of us. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dave. And thank you so much, Mick, for joining us. And we want to thank you, the listener, for listening to this episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. From Dave and I, thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.